Oftentimes when we as pro-lifers think of the devastating impact of abortion, obviously we automatically think of the innocent child in the womb and of course the impact it has on the mother. But how many of us think about the wider circle of the victims of abortion? That's what we're going to dive into in this episode of The Catholic View for Women. Our topic is Shockwaves, Abortion's Wider Circle of Victims, which is actually the title of a brand new book by our co-host Janet Morana, and she's with us today along with Elena Rodriguez, both of my beautiful co-hosts. This is such an important issue because so many people do not realize, and I think, as I said in the opening of the show, obviously our first thoughts go to the baby and the mother.
Absolutely.
But there is such a tremendous fallout from abortion, and that's obviously why you wrote this book.
Well, and that's why we call it Shockwaves, Teresa, is because the baby is at the epicenter. The death of that child, right directly at the epicenter. But then that shockwave reverberates out, you know, among this wider circle of victims, starting with the mother and then the father and so on. And we're going to talk about all these people groups. And this is not just some idea that Janet Morana suddenly came up with this. First of all, it's based on solid research by the Canadian psychiatrist, Dr. Philip Ney. I've studied under him for many years, so has Father Pavone. He has a beautiful healing program called Hope Alive, and I'm a certified counselor under that program. He also has a program for the healing of the abortionists and clinic workers that he developed all the way back in the 90s, called the Society of Centurions, to deal with the people, you know. So he has studied all these different people groups for decades and done research on them and see that the dramatic effect of abortion, it's beyond the death of the child. It's beyond just the mother and father, and it goes wider and wider and wider. And of course, as you know, Teresa, with my work with Silent No More, we started first with the women expressing their regret. I regret my abortion. And about the following year in the campaign, we had our first man give testimony. And we developed a sign, I regret lost fatherhood. So obviously it's the parents who are the initial victims of the abortion.
But even if we're going and looking at the human circle and the shockwaves, we have to look at the way it falls out throughout society in general and what it does in other areas of the human victims, because we're all victims. We're all suffering from the shockwaves, not just from the parents and the grandparents and extended relatives, but if you look at the fallout from abortion and what it causes in terms of the psychological damage, the physical damage. You know, we have so many debates in this country, of course, especially the last 5 to 10 years over health care. Why do you think some of the health care insurance rates are going so high? Is because if you look at abortion, I always describe it on my radio show as this giant octopus with tentacles stuck everywhere, reaching everywhere. They're sucking the life out of all of us. You have so many women in this country and men that are struggling with clinical depression.
Right.
And sometimes it can be brought on by trauma. It is a chemical imbalance, but it can be brought on by a trauma. You have alcoholism, an increase in all kinds of different other types of emotional problems and things along that line, all stemming from abortion.
That's right. I mean, you just have to listen to the testimonies.
Breast cancer, an increase of breast cancer.
Right.
Right.
I mean, just go to silentnomore.com, our website, you know, where we have all these testimonies, and actually a quicker URL is abortiontestimony.com, and read the stories. I mean, when you listen to those stories and read them, what happened to these women? They abused drugs and alcohol to numb the pain. Many of them had suicidal thoughts. We also know women who did commit suicide after an abortion. Sad to say. And of course, the psychological nightmares, eating disorders. There's, you know, a lot of problems are out there in society that you wonder, like, how come we haven't conquered these things yet? Well, because we keep aborting, and so you're just magnifying the problem more and more and more.
And how much of that is just a failure, whether it be voluntary or involuntary, a failure to recognize where the center of the problem is? I'm thinking of an earthquake, because you're talking about shock waves.
Oh, that's what this is
and
like.
You have an earthquake up in the surface, but there's also the hypocenter is down in the upper crust of the earth, how many miles down beneath. And those waves expand. There's a primary wave, a secondary wave, and they expand, they move, they actually go around the world. It goes from top to bottom and through the surface of the world. So anybody around the world, if they have a machine, it could even measure the consequences of an earthquake that happened halfway around the world.
Right.
Some people know and recognize the sign. Oh, I feel the ground beneath me shaking. I know what to do because I recognize it as an earthquake. But some people have never been in an earthquake. They don't know how to react. Then they can't take refuge. They don't know what to do, and they're more at risk of suffering the consequences and not protecting themselves.
That's
Likewise, if people recognize, okay, it was an abortion, it's regrettable, but here is how you protect yourself from now. Here's how you heal. Here's how you prevent those shock waves from enlarging. So that's the big difference, recognizing the center of the problem as opposed to just dealing with the outer consequences.
Right. And of course, like we just spoke about the mother and the father, but beyond that, we have the grandparents. Now think of the grandparents, two sides of the coin. We have the parents who maybe told their daughter, you have to have that abortion, I'm going to kick you out of the house. I can remember vividly, I have prayed many times at abortion clinics all over the country, and I have seen a father have a daughter by the wrist and dragging her into the abortion clinic. So there's that regret that they eventually come to. When the daughter regrets, then the parents are realizing, what did I do? That I encouraged or took you for this abortion, paid for it, said you had to do it. But then what about the grandparents who didn't know? And this is becoming...
That's huge.
That is huge. And it even happened to me, unfortunately. One of my daughters, my daughter Kelly, when she was away at school in Michigan, Teresa, sorry to say, she was going to school and she got pregnant without me knowing, and she went and had an abortion. And she kept it a secret for a while. And when I think back to what happened, she went to school, off to school in September. But by that spring, she quit and came home. Well, of course, because she had the abortion a few months prior that I never knew about. She was blaming it on her learning disability. I can't take being away from everyone. I miss everyone. So, of course, what do? You bring them home. And she took the rest of the semester off. She went back into school.
So when did you find out?
Oh, it wasn't until several years later that she finally told me. And she felt she just had to tell me, and she wanted healing. And actually, I took her up to Canada to Dr. Nay's program, to one of those Hope Alive sessions, and we went through the program together.
What was that like for you, being in the pro-life movement and being on the front lines? It was a double whammy for you.
It really was a double whammy, and very hurtful, because I've always told my daughters, no matter what, they knew that, you know, I will help you no matter what. You can come to me, we'll deal with this. And I said to her, I said, Kelly, why did you feel like you couldn't call me? And she said, Mom, I didn't want to disappoint you. And I know other parents have gone through this in the pro-life movement, other people, and they've told me it's the same story. They don't want to disappoint their parents. So sometimes, no matter how much you prepare them, no matter how much you tell them, you can always come to me, the pressure out there in society is so great that they don't want to disappoint you. And I guess because she had two sisters, she figured that I'm going to look like the bad one. You know, I have she has a twin sister plus another, her older sister, 2 years older. So maybe she felt like, oh, I'm going to be the bad kid now, which wasn't going to be the case. And but I'm so grateful that she finally did tell me, and that we went through that healing program together. And so it's deepened our relationship together. And of course, I mourn, and that's what our signs say for Silent No More. I mourn my lost grandchild to abortion. You know. And
so, are you able to? Obviously, you're able to talk about this publicly now, and she's okay with it.
Yeah, she is. You know, she said, "Well, Mom, you know, it happened, but just make sure you explain that it's not my other two sisters, it's me." Get the story straight.
Yeah.
I want them to know, and that I've gone through healing, and
that takes a lot of courage on her part.
And that, you know, she says, I don't want to. This is why I respect. She doesn't want herself want to speak publicly, because I told her when we had the campaign. She goes, no, I don't want to do my story, which is fine. But she goes, well, Mom, you could tell it, so maybe you'll help other parents to understand that they too can reconcile with their daughter and talk about it. Because you'll be surprised how common this is. Since I've come public about it, more and more people who are pro-life have come to me and said, that happened to us too, our daughter. You know, so we can't be afraid to talk about these things so that we can help everyone heal and reconcile together, you know. So I am grateful that it finally came to light.
But it's so powerful, because obviously you're so involved in the issue and the ministry, so you have so much connection to this, because you have so many friends who are post-abortive and Silent No More, and that's one of the reasons why you co-founded the Silent No More Awareness Campaign, and yet this hit directly home with you as well. So this book and this title of our discussion today, The Shockwaves of Abortion, is very personal for you.
Oh, absolutely.
You're not sitting here from a chair of, none of us is, but you're not sitting here from a chair of judgment and pointing a finger. This is very personal. We as a family
had to live through it. And to this day, I mean, her sisters don't want to talk about it. They'll say, you know, oh, Kelly, that's in the past. Hush up, hush up. You know, so if she wants to talk about it, she has to talk to me about it, you know. So there is this sense of, oh, let's just sweep that under the rug. And I think that's what happens in a lot of families. And it's really, honesty is really the best policy, and it is better to talk about it. But they tend to, her other two sisters tend to go hush more on that subject. And yet they're very proud of me, that at the work I'm doing, and the TV shows and all that. But when it comes to, when it hit home personally, they just wanted to like keep it quiet, you know. And like
I think that's an important point to make, though, Elena, because so many people look at us and we're in ministry and they think that we never have any of these issues that we deal with in our own families. Right. Right.
And we go through a lot of trials ourselves.
Right. Persecution.
Persecution, trials. And we know of a lot of people who are very, very, very near and dear to our hearts and are going through these same trials. And that kind of is a prompt to us to put the voice out there. Be careful. Make sure you know what's going on, identify what the problem is, and talk to your children and talk to your relatives, because it will happen. It happened to us.
That's right.
So we know that we have the same kind of suffering. We're just like anybody else. Right. Really. We're all sinners. We're all in this world together.
We all fall short, as St. Paul says in Romans, right?
Barbara McGuigan has a saying, and she says, we are all dancing on broken legs. Right. And this is very true.
That's a really powerful analogy. All dancing on broken legs. And I love to dance.
But you know, since coming out about this, both the Silent No More campaign, now expanding it to this wider circle of victims, and of course me coming out about my story with Kelly, Rachel's Vineyard has reported that more and more mothers and daughters now are coming on retreats.
Are reconnecting, are bonding and getting that healing together.
And coming back together on a retreat together to deal with this issue. And that's what I would encourage someone listening right now. If you know your daughter had an abortion, you haven't dealt with this yet, or maybe you're alienated from her because of that, reach out. You can just go to abortionforgiveness.com, put in your zip code, you'll see where's the nearest Rachel's Vineyard or another abortion healing program, because this has really raised awareness in a lot of the abortion recovery programs. In addition to Rachel's Vineyard, there's others out there that are now embracing these other people groups to say, yes, come into this wider circle of victims has to be brought in and to the healing.
Yeah, it's just, it's so incredible in terms of, as you said, that great analogy, Elena, of the earthquake, the level of these shockwaves and how they've just gone out everywhere, to the extended family, to friends who are affected, siblings are affected, grandparents are affected, and then we're affected because we see the loss of life. First of all, what is it now? Close to 60 million babies since Roe v. Wade, 1973 in this country. And then we think of all the problems, medical problems, emotional problems, addiction problems that are associated with abortion. This is all part of the shockwave situation that we're dealing with.
And society should mourn as a whole, because we don't know if one of these babies was going to grow up to be the doctor, the physician that found, or the research scientist who found a cure to cancer or some kind of a. Every life is precious, no matter if it's a huge accomplishment that goes public or it's an everyday life. Every life is precious.
And no man is an island.
But no man is an island. We have cheated ourselves as a society of how many benefits of not having these people grow up and be with us and given a chance to live.
And just looking at my family, for example, so Kelly lost that child, you know, I lost a grandchild. Well, her sisters lost a niece or nephew. And now her other two sisters each have two children. We have Lily and Lucas with my daughter Jennifer, and my daughter Carolyn and her husband have Vivian and Evelyn. Well, they lost a cousin. So there's a cousin not able to play with the group that's not here. You know, so this is when we're saying this wider circle and impact. It's aunts, it's uncles, it's nieces, it's nephews, it's cousins. Think of the family portrait, right?
And it's society.
And they're missing. There's missing people that, you know, take your snapshot, any family, look at your family portrait.
And then remove.
And remove, you know, that there should be other faces there that are not. They've been lost to abortion.
And the classroom where this child was going to go.
There's one empty chair there. Another empty chair there.
We have to take a break, ladies, but this is a very important discussion. And Janet, thank you for sharing such a personal story and also for writing this book, Shockwaves, Abortion's Wider Circle of Victims, which is, again, as I mentioned, the title of Janet's new book. You can find it at the EWTN Religious Catalog, and we'll have more information on that at the end of this segment. We're going to take a break, but we want to encourage you pray and to really think about the shockwaves of abortion, because a lot of us don't think about it. I didn't think about it for a long time, even though I was involved in the pro-life movement, until I started to do work with Silent No More and also do a lot of research for my own books in terms of the fallout, the medical, the psychological, the government fallout from abortion. If you look at the money that's spent from Planned Parenthood to support abortion in this country. So it is an issue that affects us all. We'll be right back with more in this discussion. Stay tuned. Welcome back to this episode of The Catholic View for Women. Teresa Tomeo here, along with my lovely and very talented and so intelligent co-hosts. I so appreciate your input, Elena Rodriguez and Janet Morana. Our topic is the shockwaves, abortion's wider circle of victims. It's actually also the title of Janet Morana's latest book, and we'll give you the details on that as well. I keep thinking about this whole idea of shockwaves. Loved your analogy of the earthquake. It's huge. I know, Janet, you have a number of different points you want to make, but one point I think that's extremely important, and also thanks to our spiritual advisor, Father Pavone, for reminding us of this and helping us steer this discussion in terms of the way we need to go, that those of us in the pro-life movement are grieving on a regular basis, and we suffer some of the shockwaves. We were talking during the commercial break about, you know, my husband Deacon Dominic very well, and he is on the board of a pregnancy center, and he also is one of the prayer warriors and one of the helpers of God's precious infants every Saturday outside the infamous abortion mills on 8 Mile in Detroit. And he comes home on Saturdays, and really I just need to let him sit and be alone for a while, because it's so devastating for him to see the women going in and out and in and out, and, you know, wondering, did they have the abortion? Are they going there just to, you know, get the process started? But that mourning, that sense of loss and grief.
That's right. Well, that's what we have to face, no matter what aspect in the pro-life movement we're in. So, like you just gave a good example, Teresa, those who pray outside the abortion clinic, they see those women come in with visible baby bumps and coming out without them. You know, they know that the child has died, and we couldn't do anything. Then there's the counselors that are outside the clinic who are trying to intervene, who are trying to get that woman's attention, to talk to her.
Hand them information.
Hand them information. Right. I want to help you. Then, of course, you have the pregnancy centers, the counselors there that maybe they get that abortion-minded client into the center, and they even so much as show her an ultrasound. So now you have the ultrasound technician sees the image of that child, trying to convince this woman not to abort this child. They leave, they never hear from her again. She goes and schedules an abortion. They've already bonded with that child, that technician. They've seen it. And the counselor, they've seen that baby. And we've heard from countless counselors who said that, thank God you brought this up to us, Janet, that we need to grieve. Father Pavone and I gave a talk, we've done it now a few times, at the Heartbeat Conference, which, you know, Peggy Hartshorn.
Right.
And we talked to them about how they need to grieve. And now a lot of these centers, what they're doing is they're having a monthly gathering of all their counselors and sonographers.
Wow, that's a great idea.
And they're getting together just for prayer. And if anyone wants to name any of the babies that they felt were aborted, even though they tried to stop it, they're doing that. And they're talking about their feelings, like, how did that feel after I could not convince that client not to abort, and I saw that little baby, and the babies perform. You have to see this. You know, when they threatened for abortion, it's almost like the child knows. Some of them are waving and flipping and doing attention. So we have to admit ourselves that yes, we failed, but we tried, and we have to mourn those children that we've lost. And it's not just those people who are on the front lines. But what about the legislators who spend months and months fighting to pass a bill that they know is going to save lives, like the fetal pain bills and the dismemberment bills, and they can't get it passed, or if they get it passed and then the courts fight and squash it. So they have to mourn that loss, because they know how many lives would have been saved by that action. So it's really on and on. All of us who are involved in the pro-life movement in any aspect have to take a step back and say, I need to heal too. I need to acknowledge that there are some children I could not save, and I have to mourn that, because if we do not do that, that's what we have in the pro-life movement, burnout. where people say, I can't do this any longer. Because unless you heal yourself and give yourself time to grieve the children you couldn't save, you yourself are going to end up in burnout.
I also think for the work, for example, that we do, being involved in talk shows and media on a regular basis, that you can get burnout from, we were just talking, before we came on camera this morning about a very frustrating email I received from a listener who claimed she was 100% pro-life, and then saying that we should encourage people to embrace the words of in the statements of Hillary Clinton regarding abortion. And my head is like, all party politics aside, folks, I'm just saying that it's very clear where Hillary Clinton stood when she ran for office on abortion. She was supported 100% by Planned Parenthood. She supports abortion all through 9 months of pregnancy, made no bones about it, and even did not deny this in the last presidential debate. And I get so frustrated because I'm on the air every day, and like you, I've covered the March for Life for years, trying to educate, trying to teach, and then you see how clear we are. And this actual comment came in after an amazing interview I did with our spiritual advisor, Father Frank Pavone, who's the priest, preeminent priest on this topic, and this disconnect, and I'm just like, what do you? And it's frustrating, and you do get. You can get burnout from that as well. That's another one of the shockwaves, I think.
Well, and it builds up.
It builds
day
up,
in and day out. It builds up.
Yeah. And then, of course, another shockwave that people may not be thinking about is suppose you encouraged a friend to have an abortion. Maybe a classmate when you were in college. Maybe you said,
huge.
That's huge out there. Maybe you said to them, yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe you even gave them some of the money. I know some people who donate to this day to a pro-life organization the exact money they paid to help a friend get an abortion.
Wow.
to help to get over what they have done. So, friends don't let friends drive drunk, as Father Frank always says. Well, friends don't let friends get an abortion. So the friends have to heal too. And of course, the abortion doctors, as I said before, and the clinic workers with the Dr. Nays programs. Anyone who knows anyone like that, societyofcenturion's.com is where they can get more help about that.
Well, we only have about 3 minutes left, and thank you, first of all, for, again, sharing your story. Very, very personal, and I'm sure it's not easy for you to talk about it. And thank your daughter, Kelly, for her willingness to share this story through her mom, her amazing mom, Janet Morana of Silent No More and Priests for Life. And congratulations on the book, Shockwaves, Abortion's Wider Circle of Victims, which will be one of our homework assignments, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. All right, so we'll do a little homework right now, which, of course, the first one is to read my book, Shockwaves, Abortion's Wider Circle of Victims. And it's published by Catholic Book Publishers, and it's available at the EWTN Religious Catalog. That's EWTNRC.com. And we have a special website for this. It's called abortionshockwaves.com. You can go there for more information. And we have a lot of resources, from prayers that were written, homily hints, and testimonies are up there. So we encourage you to share that information. Of course, number 3, you can read my other book, Recall Abortion, available at the EWTN Religious Catalog, which really delves into the abortion issue in great detail. Number 4 is also read Teresa's beautiful book, Extreme Makeover, which also has many chapters on this topic.
Yeah, and one big one called The Abortion Distortion.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's available at the EWTN Religious Catalog. And I want to comment quickly about these books, too. You can order them and get them into your school libraries. Very important to get these young people to read these books so that they can see the fallout for abortion, because they will probably know somebody who's considering an abortion. And number 5, of course, go to our website, thecatholicviewforwomen.com, for more information. Sign up for our e-letter. All these resources will be up on our website. And of course, finally, like us on Facebook, too.
Ladies, thanks for your contribution to this very dynamic and important discussion on the shockwaves of abortion and abortion's wider circle of victims. I'm Teresa Tomeo, along with Elena Rodriguez and Janet Morana. And remember, we are all impacted by abortion. We all feel the shockwaves. Thanks, and tune in next time to The Catholic View. God bless you.